If you played Battlefield 6 multiplayer or maybe even the beta, you might have noticed that after trying RedSec, the guns feel really different, almost easier. So we dove super deep into this, and I spent way too many hours on the stream yesterday just testing out the recoil between RedSec and between the live multiplayer version of the game, and I noticed something pretty interesting. The recoil is different. In some cases, it is significantly different. We're gonna go over all the guns with recoil, and we're gonna compare them, and you guys can tell me what you guys think yourself, but it's pretty crazy. Now, obviously, don't mind the graphics, the little ottr tweets here in the middle. I just put that there because I want to make sure that people don't just screen grab this and move on and, you know, make a bunch of posts about it. So starting off, we have the GRT-BC. This one actually felt different when I played with it. I felt like it was a beamer, but when we tested recoil, it didn't seem to be that different. Maybe it's a little bit faster at the start, but overall, it does seem to end up being pretty much the same recoil, more or less. If anything, I'd say it seems like it kind of like the first few shots, the recoil seems a bit tighter, and then it kind of clumps up at the end, which I think is fine. You can really feel it though when you're shooting. Next up, we have the Cord 6B67. This one is interesting to me because it does feel different. It does feel like you absolutely shred people over range with it, but when we actually tested it, it did seem like it didn't actually make that much of a difference actually recoil wise. You can tell it is a little bit tighter here. A slight like alteration to the pattern. Yeah, it is tighter, but it's like not by a lot. This red box on the left is the same as the right one. I'm just showing first the left one and then the right one, and then I just kind of copied it over to give you guys like a perspective. Also, the tests we've been doing are at 10 meters away from the wall, so it's easy to replicate. But obviously, because of RedSec being RedSec, we had to kind of just use different walls wherever we found them, so it's a little bit scuffed. We did figure out we could jump into the gauntlet eventually, but the same thing applied there. It's hard to get the exact same material. Then we, of course, have the KTS MK8, which already was a beamer in the multiplayer, but when I dove into RedSec, I was surprised on how much of a beam this truly is. You can snipe people across any range because it has no recoil. It actually has less recoil than the multiplayer version. Just take a look at this, where it has a pretty much, I guess I would say the vertical recoil is almost halved. I'd say the actual like horizontal, there wasn't really much to begin with, hasn't really changed. The vertical is definitely halved, so that's interesting. The KV9 as well did not really, like, you can feel it's different. It's harder to tell from the image here, but you can tell it's more of a like a pattern to it here. Here it was mostly, it almost felt random. It just jumped all over the place, and here it kind of like zigzags up to the left. It's a little bit more controllable. Next up, we have the L85A3. Now this one is interesting because it was kind of hype leading into Battlefield 6 or even RedSec, and a lot of people said you can't sleep on it. We tested it and actually quite popped off hard. However, when we took it into the range, I felt like it wasn't like a meaningful difference. One thing that stood out to me in the patterns is that in multiplayer, it seems to pull to the left, and in RedSec, it seems to pull to the right. It does, like, it almost looks like it's mirrored more than anything. There didn't seem to be any change in like the overall spread size. Mostly, it was mostly just that. Then next up, we have the LMR. I think we might as well mention the DMRs because they do exist in the game and they do have some recoil. As for the LMR, it seems pretty much the same. You have a first shot accuracy, and then it kind of just goes straight upwards. Nothing really seems to change there. Then we have the M60, which was a pain to record because I didn't realize that almost every wall that is destructible will break in a full mag of the M60. So I do apologize if the screenshot is going to be a little bit, I guess, like not clean. But even the M60, when you compare a full spray on the left here in multiplayer to a full spray on a wall in RedSec, again, both at 10 meters, there is a pretty noticeable difference in just how large the recoil pattern is. It actually is a lot tighter. And again, it's flipped for some reason. I don't know why they're flipping some of these recoil patterns. Or is it just to mess with people's muscle memory? I don't know, but it's interesting that it does do that. Then we have the M1014 buckshot. Again, you know, shotguns might feel a bit silly to include, but there is a difference, so I think we might as well include them. As you can see, it pretty much just has, obviously the spread is going to be the same on the pellets, or more or less. There's a lot of innate randomness in how the pellets did go, but overall you can tell that the vertical climb is significantly less. You'll notice that in the slugs as well. Next up, we have the M123K, and oh man, I did not expect this one to go this crazy. I think overall you'd say LMG seems to be one of the biggest winners in this video. For example, the M123K has a significant decrease in its vertical climb, or rather it hits like the max spread sooner, but it doesn't like go farther. So it actually stays quite tight. Just pull down a little bit at the start, and then it's just gonna go crazy after that. That is actually an insane comparison if you really think about it. Another LMG is of course the M240L. What's interesting with the M240L is that it actually does not seem to have that much of a change, if any at all. This is like potentially a slight slight reversal that I could chalk this up to spread potentially. There's always going to be an innate spread on the top of the recoil. This does seem to follow pretty much the same pattern, but maybe it could be reversed as well. Actually, now I'm looking at it, it does look reversed, doesn't it? At least the top part. Again, it could just be the spread though. Next up, we have the M250, an absolute beamer over range. But how does it feel, you know, comparing multiplayer to RedSec? You can tell that there is a massive difference in the recoil between the multiplayer version and the RedSec one, where the vertical recoil is significantly lower. Even the pattern seems different, where it kind of curves like up and to the right, and then there's just like a chunk of them. It doesn't really turn left and right. I feel like most of these turn left and right in the multiplayer, but in RedSec, it's just a straight line pretty much if you want to compensate. I'm mentioning here, as you can see in the screenshot though, obviously in this one we had a flash hider on. That's on my default build, or like the one I had, because I know it shouldn't attribute to recoil. In this one, this was out of the BR, but it doesn't have a muzzle on it. This is just a skin as far as I can tell. Moving on, we have the M277, which also has been simplified, if you want to call it that. In the multiplayer, you can tell it kind of just jumps all over the place. You can feel this different in the multiplayer in general, this patch, but you know, it is what it is. As for in RedSec, again, it now follows that upwards and to the right pattern, definitely with a ton of like spread along the way. It kind of jumps all over the place. I think you could probably learn how to control this a little bit better, but it doesn't have like a clear zigzag. It's just kind of like an up and to the right. Of course, I'd say the climb is like slightly less, and the horizontal recoil is partially different. The DMR, the M39, did not really seem to have much, if any, change at all. You could tell that maybe like the first shot accuracy was different. It seemed like you could get maybe 2 shots off before it starts climbing. In the RedSec and in multiplayer, you get 1 shot off and then it starts climbing. Maybe that's an intentional difference. I don't know. Probably, honestly, yes. Moving on, we have the M4 and 17. Now, this one, a lot of people don't like the recoil on, myself included. So does it have any changes? In multiplayer, it has a typical up and to the right pattern. And in RedSec, it also has a pretty similar up and to the right pattern, but with less vertical recoil. The M433, which has one of the harshest recoils in the game, has also been changed. Of course, it has. As you can see here, when we pull up the comparison, and I apologize, we couldn't find any concrete here, but I'm sure it gets the point across. You can see it's still upwards and to the right pattern with a lot of spread, but it pretty much follows the same upwards and to the right trajectory, and then it kind of groups at the end of the spray. It's just way more, if you want to call it, like randomness to the multiplayer version versus the RedSec version. Moving on with the M44. Yeah, I'm going to test the M44 as well, because I wanted to know. I like this gun, but it feels a little bit hard to use in multiplayer. It's a high skill, high reward gun. Lots of damage, 1 shots in the head with hollow points up to 20 meters. But what about the recoil? And it surprised me too, because in multiplayer, it actually has some horizontal recoil to when you're using it. It's going to be an up and to the right. I do compensate for this in multiplayer. But when I play in RedSec, it's just pretty much straight up. It's the same vertical recoil, but it has nearly no horizontal recoil. Just pull down with this thing and you're going to be fine. Interesting tip here for M44 enjoyers is that the first shot accuracy is pretty good. The second shot is going to be crazy. And then the third shot and the next few ones kind of group together, so you don't have to compensate nearly as much. Next up, we have the M45A1. This is also a pistol, and we see some pretty noticeable change in the recoil as well. Now, this is obviously going to be a different wall texture, but I'm pretty confident to say it does seem to have like slightly less spread as well. Maybe I'm hallucinating. I would definitely say it seems like it doesn't spread nearly as much as it does in the multiplayer. The M4A1, another fan favorite, one of my first builds, which I enjoyed, also has seen some change. In this case, I want to argue that it might be a pretty significant change in the recoil pattern as well, or the spread. As you can tell here from the picture, the M4A1 has in multiplayer, it's an up and to the right pattern. It curves a little bit to the left and then to the right. Left again, I think. And there's this like a little thing here at the top here. I believe that's like maybe the last shot. Whereas the RedSec one, it kind of just pulls up and to the right in a straight line, and then it just kind of like jumps between here. It also doesn't go all the way up. It doesn't have like as much of a max spread, either vertically or horizontally, when compared to the multiplayer. Next up, we have the M87A1. Yep, we're testing the shotguns as well. I was curious. There actually was either no change or so little of a change. Like, there's gonna be this innate randomness of shotguns, so in this case I couldn't tell a noticeable difference at all. Yes, in the picture you can tell there's like a small gap, but again, randomness might offset it. It seems very similar other than that. And M84A1 slugs, however, did see a change, and they're actually really good in RedSec, is something we noticed. So it follows the same logic of first shot is on point, second shot is quite up, and then it climbs from there. Just how it works in multiplayer and RedSec. However, in RedSec it has less horizontal recoil and noticeably less vertical recoil, so it is actually much easier to use. So moving on with the NVO 228. Now this gun is a bit peculiar. I've complained about the spread. I've showed it in our blue video previously. It has a pretty harsh Bloom. But in addition to that, it does have a pretty harsh recoil as well. In the multiplayer, it pretty much just pulls up a little bit to the left and then just goes crazy style on the right, and just kind of, you know, it spreads all over the place. And when you compare it to RedSec, it does go up pretty much like with a slight curve, and then it groups, but it doesn't pull nearly as harsh to the right. I think that's a general trend we're noticing here, is that it rarely pulls nearly as hard to the right in RedSec compared to multiplayer. Most of the times they have been like, let's call them verticalized. Like most of the sprays are pretty much like they put a compensator on them, and then they've just lowered the vertical recoil as well. So they're usually less vertical recoil, almost always less horizontal recoil no matter what. Then we have the P18. Now the P18 is actually crazy looking at it. So the P18 has a pretty significant decrease and almost halving in its vertical recoil. So it's a lot easier to shoot it. I don't like these pistols at all, and I'm never going to use them, but it's pretty interesting that it's like almost half. This is where it gets interesting, and maybe there's something more to it that I'm missing. Maybe I messed up the testing. I don't know. If you guys are in the comments, you can tell me if I'm wrong. But the PW5A3, the MP5, is actually one of the few guns that have a different recoil in RedSec that isn't like an improvement. Maybe I'm missing something here, so tell me if I'm wrong. When you compare the multiplayer PW5 with the RedSec PW5, you can tell that the recoil is much, I guess, harsher on the horizontal level. It spreads way more at the top, both to the left and to the right, and it doesn't actually fit in that same box we gave it in multiplayer. This comes with some other changes that we did find when we were testing all these weapons out. If you guys are interested in seeing that, we're going to release a video hopefully tomorrow going deeper into that, so make sure to subscribe for that. Figured we just focus on recoil for this one, because I mean, this is already a really long video even without that additional information. Speaking of which, next up we have the PW7A2. Now this gun did not get the MP5 treatment. It actually did see a pretty significant decrease as well. In multiplayer, it's an up and to the right pattern, whereas in RedSec, it kind of just, it's up slightly to the right and then it's back to the left again, but with a significantly less impactful, again, horizontal recoil. The QBZ192 is the next one on the list. Very interesting. It also has that weird, I guess, reversal of the horizontal recoil at the start. You pull up, it pulls up and to the right rather than just kind of upwards or up to the left, and then he just groups the recoil. At that point, it pretty much looks the same as in multiplayer. However, the top of the max recoil is significantly less than for multiplayer, and you can clearly notice here in the boxes that is a pretty big gap there. Next up, we have the RPKM, and this one surprised me. Oh my god, I might just make this might be a meta build for me. I already thought it was a pretty good gun, but a loadout with, like, let's say hollow points is actually insane. So if you pull up the multiplayer versus RedSec, you can tell like this almost looks made up. Now obviously this screenshot isn't perfect because I used I had to use some random beach store wall or something for this. As you can tell, there is a significant difference here in the recoil. Now obviously Bloom, we haven't tested for it, maybe we'll dive into that later, but it's probably not unchanged. It does seem like Bloom works as it does in the original game. Like honestly, I don't even know why it started the box there. Oh yeah, it should have started from the bottom here. That's on me. I didn't plan it accordingly. I couldn't figure out which was the best. I think we did a split up both, but as you can tell, it has a significantly, like, probably almost half vertical recoil, and yeah, probably almost half the horizontal as well. It's pretty much like 50% of the recoil that it has in the multiplayer. Like that is actually insane. We have the SCW10. Now this one surprised me because I thought that it was worse in the BR because I used it a lot in multiplayer and I thought it was like one of the goats. But when we pulled it up and we tested it, it turns out that it's actually quite close. As you can see here, the vertical climb is significantly less. There, you could argue there's some less horizontal recoil as well. I will say though that as you can see, the pattern is slightly different, so maybe that's what threw me off. Like I was used to the gun pulling like upwards and to the right in this specific way, and now it pulls like a little bit harsher to the right, but you could just compensate for that by pulling down to the left. I don't know for sure why I struggle with it, but knowing this now, I'll be able to probably pop up with SLW a little bit more. Next up, we have the SG553R, and this one surprised me. So obviously we know from a previous video that there are bloom changes to the SG553R, but there's also recoil changes, and I've been absolutely beaming with this gun in like the close mid-range. It actually kept surprising me just how strong this thing is now. As you can see here, when you compare the boxes, of course, you can see that there is clearly less vertical recoil at a first glance. You can also tell that, other than that, you can tell that the pattern seems pretty similar. It just goes up and to the right and then groups at the top. But even the grouping itself is tighter. Like I would say it pulls up pretty much the same amount and then groups much tighter at the end tail of the magazine compared to in multiplayer. So it is a lot better. Moving on, we have the SGX. Now this one, man, I expected more. I thought this gun would be a lot better because we absolutely shredded in the BR, but it turns out it wasn't that dramatic, or maybe I'm missing something, because when we compare the recoil spread, it's pretty much similar. I guess it's a little bit like less horizontal, a little bit less vertical in the BR, but all in all, it's not that much of a difference. The SL9, however, is oh man. So when you compare these two shots, you can tell that there is a massive difference there, not just in the vertical recoil, but also in the horizontal. As you can tell, it's almost halved. I would say like, what is that, 30%? Both in the horizontal and the vertical, and the recoil is completely different. It doesn't follow the same pattern at all, but it's so tight. If you just pull downwards, you're pretty much gonna laser at any range. What's funny with this one is this is one of the first tests I did, and my random saw me painting on the wall, and he figured he would add in a little bit of art on his own, which was beautiful. Moving on, we have the SOAR 300. This one did not seem to have any meaningful changes to it, if at all. It does seem like this may have been a slight adjustment to like the first few shots. They do seem to pull more to the right than to the left. But other than that, the gripping seems similar. Horizontal spread, or the horizontal size, vertical size, all seems pretty similar. Next up, we have the SOAR 556, the SCAR, as many call it. This one I wasn't expecting too much with, and after we tested it, I feel like there isn't much of a difference in the recoil. There seems to be like a small change to the horizontal and a little bit to the vertical. Again, I will apologize. This one is a bit blurry and actually starts around here, I would say, assuming that's the first one. So this should like be like a 5-10%. Nothing massive though. Just pull upwards, you're fine. Overall though, I wouldn't recommend this gun because the bloom is absolutely atrocious on it. But you know, that's another video. Next up, we have the SVDM, another DMR. I think we have to include them. I'm glad we did include them because I think with how BRs play out, I was very confident that DMRs would be like V-play with about 200 health pool and whatnot. And I think I may have been right. And when you compare the recoil, you can tell how they can be pretty valuable. So obviously, as the same as with pretty much any like high precision weapon, the first shot is on point and then it does a big jump and then groups upwards. However, when you compare this SVDM multiplayer versus RedSec, you can tell it has a much larger horizontal recoil in the multiplayer or spread, and a much larger vertical one, both in the first jump and the overall recoil. You can also tell that it does seem to pull like slightly, it seems to pull to the left rather than to the right in the multiplayer, but it's just pull down, it should be fine. Next up, another DMR, we have the SVK. As you can tell in multiplayer, it's first shot and then it kind of like groups up to the left, I'd say. When you compare it to the RedSec version, it has pretty much half the horizontal recoil, a significantly less vertical recoil, and yeah, there's a jump at the start and then it kind of just groups kind of the same way. So there was just a change to that. But anyways, moving on, we have one of my favorites in this one. Like, it genuinely made me laugh when we were getting this comparison shot, because it actually is insane how terrible the recoil is on this gun. We've covered it in the past. The TR7 has an absolutely atrocious horizontal recoil. If you guys would tell me in the comments and say there's no difference in the recoil between the two games, I would just point at the TR7. Look at this and tell me you're not, like, I'm not crazy. When testing in multiplayer, we could notice that the recoil was insane, especially the horizontal one. It pulled so far to the left and a little bit up, it actually overshot the wall. The last few bullets, I felt like it got the point across, so we kept it. It looks funny. When you compare it to RedSec, this last part of the spray doesn't even exist. It's I don't even know. It's like 60% less vertical recoil. You can just cut that in the middle and then some. I would say it has maybe slightly, like, I'd say even slightly less vertical recoil because these last few bullets don't climb as high, but that is insane. Next up, we have the UMG 40, where we also saw a bit of a difference in the vertical climb, slight changes to the horizontal climb, but it pretty much just pulls a little bit less upwards. Then we have the USG 90. This one was interesting because the main difference was not in the size of the spread, even though there was a little bit of a difference, but it just pulls straight up at the start and then groups rather than just going all over the place like it does in multiplayer. So that is interesting. Next up, we have the AK-4D, which I wanted to be really good recoil wise, but it actually has either no change at all or very marginal changes. As you can tell here, when we compare the two, on the horizontal axis, it seems to be about the same. On the vertical, it seems to be about the same. And even the pattern itself looks pretty similar. It's like, yeah, a little bit off. Like, this one looks cleaner, but that's about it. The AK-205, I just had to test it. I had to know for sure. Obviously, it barely has any bloom nor recoil already, but I wanted to see how it played in BR. And yeah, even in RedSec, it's like, I should have put it in the corner. That's on me. But you can tell it's like half the recoil on the horizontal axis, and it's like 40% less on the vertical. Like, that is an incredible amount. I guess I should say 30, but even so, like, you didn't even need to touch this and it would still have no recoil. You didn't have to do anything here, guys. But all right, sure. You just pull down for the first, like, what's that, 5-6 bullets, and then it's just gonna keep shooting in that exact spot. Like, you don't have to change anything. Next up, we have a terrible gun that I hate using. I had one guy in my comments tell me that it is a great gun. He uses it all the time. I still don't see it. That's the 18.5 KSK, aka the Saiga. This is with buckshot. We don't have slugs unlocked. It might be different with slugs. It does 75 damage with slugs. It can be goated. I wouldn't know. I didn't unlock it. I hate the gun that much. But as for buckshot, I could not tell a difference in the spread whatsoever. Moving on, we have the B36A4. This one also had like small marginal changes, maybe like to like the pattern itself. As you can tell here, here, it has a, when you compare the two, it seems to curve like up and then to the right, rather than up to the right and then like upwards and a little bit to the left again. With then a grouping, the first few shots at the very least are more horizontal and don't have that as much deviation on the way up until you hit like max recoil, for lack of a better word. Next up, we have the DRS-IAR. This one I've seen a lot of takes about, even in multiplayer and now in BR. And after testing it, like clearly there is a difference. As you can see here on the screen, we have about, I'd say, a pretty noticeable decrease both in vertical as well as horizontal recoil. One thing that did stand out to me here though was that the pattern looks pretty much the exact same and the spread looks pretty much the exact same. The big thing that was interesting was, however, that again, it's just much smaller height there. For some reason, some of these just look mirrored at times. I don't know what's up with that. Again, maybe an intentional design thing, maybe a spread, I don't know. Next up, we have the FN5. This one has also seen some changes with the same thing. Like this one is like, you can't tell me this isn't an intentional change in the recoil. As you can see here, when you compare the shots of the two, the BR obviously has about half or like 20%, 30% less recoil vertically, but you can tell that this one starts by pulling to the left and then upwards, almost like in a straight line. This one pulls more to the right and then back to the left. So that's just an interesting change. I guess that could be an overall nerf on a horizontal level, but definitely like the vertical seems about the same. The GGH-22, the Glock, the new gun that has been added to the game. Just wanted to check it. I don't like this gun. I just want to have it said. I hate this gun. I don't understand why they, it needed a switch or something. Like it needs to be auto, semi-auto. It doesn't really serve much of a purpose over the other weapons, over the other pistols. But I digress. When you compare the two, it has like a slight change to its maximum vertical climb. It still has that gap at the start where you shoot the first shot, then the second shot, and then like it actually has another jump from the second shot in BR, whereas it kind of groups a little bit differently in multiplayer. So that is interesting. Other than that, it doesn't seem that much of a change. And yeah, that was a lot of guns. That was a lot of recoils. It took forever to measure out because I had to get them in BR and then test them, and then we could move on and get the comparison shots and whatnot. We did this live on stream and it took absolutely forever. So I hope you guys enjoyed the Battlefield Science. We have way more Battlefield Science on the way. Again, just a quick shout out if you guys do enjoy the content. Very small thing you guys can do. I'm not gonna ask you guys to buy something new from me. I'm not gonna ask you, like, we do have sponsors and whatever. I would love if you get any of those sponsors we mentioned in the descriptions. Use my code, gives me a kickback. But what I'm gonna ask you guys to do is, if you do play Battlefield 6, which I know if you watch this video you probably do, is that you pull up the Battlefield store. When you do buy anything in the Battlefield store, if you're getting Battlefield Pro, Battle Pass, Battlefield coins, or any of these packs, whatever you get, right? Or even if you buy something in EA Play. However, this one works on Steam, EA Play, and on console. Just make sure that you put in code ottr here at the very end. This just gives me a tiny bit of a kickback, and it's a great way for you guys to support the stream, support the content, without actually having to put any more skin in the game. You're probably gonna be buying this stuff anyways. They also have merch, which is really cool. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, guys. I'm gonna go get ready for stream. I'll see you guys later. Peace out. Bye-bye.